What's happening, guys? Welcome into another boxing breakdown and prediction show for this weekend's junior lightweight clash between former unified super bantamweight champion Carl the Jackal Frampton and current WBO junior lightweight champion Jamel Herring in the top-ranked ESPN Plus card over in Dubai this weekend. So let's get into it. Now, it's not too often in boxing that we get two fighters into the ring with the exact same pre-fight odds, but that's exactly what we have here, with both fighters entering Saturday night's fight at odds of -110. So the bookies really are expecting this one to be incredibly close. But these odds to me really reflect a tale of what have you done for me lately kind of job. There's no doubt in my mind that Frampton is the far more accomplished fighter of these two. Unified win over former champion Scott Quigg a few years ago, for example. He was the guy who broke the jaw of Oscar Valdez, who most recently dominated Miguel Burchelt for that WBC title. At this same weight, a dominant win over former WBSS finalist and pound-for-pound star Nonito Donaire as well, who recently remains the only man to give the Japanese fighter Naoya Inoue a serious test over the course of the monster's career so far. And of course, that 1-1 series split against former WBC, WBA champ Leo Santa Cruz in a fight series that must be said really annoyed a lot of Irish fans over here. And Santa Cruz pretty much flat out refused to fight a trilogy fight after promising one right before the second fight was announced. And, you know, Frampton's been chasing that fight for years to no avail, unfortunately, and a rubber match we'll likely never see at this point. But nonetheless, that resume shows in and of itself. Frampton is a fighter who really has been operating at the highest levels of boxing for quite some time now. Was named Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year 2016 as well, for example. So in terms of career, his highs have been far greater than what Jamel Herring has accomplished so far. But at 34, it's really a case of what have you done for me lately, as we say. And Frampton has looked pretty unspectacular over his most recent outings. At 35, Herring is actually 18 months older than the Irishman, but has had a lot less wear on the tyres in terms of ring wars, not actual wars, as Herring has done 2 tours of Iraq. So fair play to him on that point. But because of that pause in his career for military duty, it's actually having a late career resurgence right now in Herring's camp. The former Marine is on a 6-fight win streak, has had 2 defenses as well of his WBO crown after catching it from Masayuki Ito back in 2019, but has 2 losses on his resume, as does Frampton, to Ladarius Miller and Denis Shavakov, respectively. Now, the interesting thing ahead of this one is the height dynamic between these two, with Frampton being a full 5 inches shorter than Herring. But those 2 losses that we just mentioned of Herring's also came against shorter fighters. He got the towel thrown in by his corner against Denis Shavakov back in 2016 after taking some heavy punishment in that fight. And look, there's no shame in that in my book, as Shavakov is just a straight dog in the ring and has remained one of the most underappreciated fighters in all of boxing over the last decade in my eyes. But against Miller, who's only slightly smaller than Herring, but fought low in their fight, Herring seemed to have real trouble landing his jab, as both Shavakov and Miller were jumping in, looking to collapse the pocket with a sustained body attack, and it worked. And that will no doubt be an area Frampton will look to target in this fight as well. Fight low, look to work his way on the inside against the bigger man, as there's simply a huge discrepancy technically on the inside between these two, with Frampton being the better fighter. 3 years ago, I honestly would have had this line around -250, -300 for Frampton. But I was slightly disappointed with his performance against Josh Warrington back in 2018. He let Warrington completely dominate him early in that one before making the necessary adjustments and finishing reasonably strongly. But the signs of decline were nevertheless there. Now, Warrington, who looks for constant exchanges in fights, resembles nothing like Herring style-wise. So that shouldn't overly concern Frampton ahead of this one. But it's sometimes really difficult to tell when a fighter's past his peak or over the hill, as it can sometimes happen overnight, especially if the fighter's been in a series of protracted wars like Frampton has. So while style-wise that fight doesn't concern me too much in terms of ring wear, it does. And that's exactly what we saw in that bout against Warrington. James DeGale was only 33 when he fought Chris Eubank Jr. back in 2019. Former Olympic gold medalist in Beijing, multiple world titles against quality opposition. And in terms of prime for prime, he was taking on a fighter in Eubank who I believe didn't even belong on the same stage as DeGale in terms of overall career achievements and boxing ability. And I was all over the price in the former champion, as it was around the same as this fight, even money. But DeGale looked like he absolutely fell off a cliff in that fight and took so many hard shots off Eubank. He's never fought since, retired immediately after the fight. And that's my real concern here as well. Prime for prime, Frampton's the far superior fighter in my eyes, not only in overall body of work and what he's accomplished in the ring, but also overall technical ability as well. But despite that, he may well have had one too many battles in there, and Herring might be there to capitalise on that come Saturday night. Nonetheless, I got to go with my countryman here, Frampton, in this one, not just because of what he's accomplished, as we said, but also the fact Herring has tended to struggle against shorter fighters over his career. And you really don't get much shorter than Carl Frampton at 5'5". So it won't be a serious play, as I do have my concerns about Frampton's wear and tear at this point of his career. But I think at even money, the Irishman presents the greater level of value ahead of this one, and I'll be playing him for small stakes on Saturday. Take Carl the Jackal Frampton as your free play for this weekend's boxing action. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the Boxing Prediction Show. As always, leave us your thoughts, and you can catch me over on Twitter at the SportsWolf83 and at my handicapper page, Kevin Dolan, over at WagerTalk. As always, thanks for listening. Slán